Paul, what are some of the current projects that you're working on?
Well, we're designing lots of high-speed trains at the moment and metro trains in China and for other parts of the world. And we're also working with Thai Airways here in Thailand. It's a long relationship, and we're working on a number of their new aircraft and new projects, which is fun. We're also involved in hotel design, cruise ship design, product design. So we're a very sort of multidisciplinary design group based in London and in China, but most of our work's from overseas.
And all of them must be green designs?
That's part of the brief. I think it's always part of the brief, yeah. And when we're designing a hotel room, of course, we're thinking about materials that can be reused, easy to clean, things that can be easily repaired. It's always part of the project. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now for the trains or planes or even hotels, how do you incorporate the sustainability part into the design part?
Well, with trains, I think it's quite straightforward. Is that when we're designing a train, we're trying to persuade people to not use the car and perhaps not use aeroplanes for short-haul travel. So that's the big aim, to try and save energy in that way. Because if everybody got out of their cars, of course, then we would use less energy. So that's the big one. So as a designer, my ambition and my aim is to make the journey as good as traveling by car. So we have to think about the railway station, we have to think about the train itself, and bringing out all of the advantages of traveling by train over a car. So, for instance, you don't have to park the train. You can work on the train, you can wander off and have something to eat on the train, and you go from the center of the city to the center of the city. So there's lots of advantages. But at the moment, I don't think trains are very well designed, because they're almost like a piece of public transport, and they're behind aircraft design, because we design a lot of aircraft and airports. And I think the railway travel experience isn't as good, and that's why many people choose to travel by car or aeroplane.
So you have to make it more attractive through design.
Through design, yeah. And the experience needs to be better. And that's again something that we design. When you're designing the interior of an aircraft, for instance, we're designing personal space within a public space in some respects. In a first-class seat, you want to be private. So we're doing the same sort of thing on trains now.
As cities grow bigger all around the world, what are the challenges for a designer like you?
Well, there's a lot of people. I think the challenge is with many of the existing cities is that we can't carry on building new roads or new railway tracks. We just have to make what we have work better. So it's like making the cogs work better. So here in Bangkok, how do we solve some of the traffic problems? How can we persuade people to use other forms of transport? And a lot of that is to do with design, to make this a more appealing process and a quicker process. And it's all to do with design and engineering.
Where did you get new ideas from?
Everywhere. You know the idea we had for moving platforms, the trains that move together, and it's called moving platforms. And the idea is that I believe railway stations are very old-fashioned, because they haven't really changed for 100 years. So the idea is that you can get a tram, maybe from outside this building, and then this tram goes through the city and then links up with the high-speed train. And the high-speed train slows down slowly, and they connect whilst moving. People can travel from one train to another, and when that's happened, the high-speed train carries on and the tram comes back into the city. And the idea is that you can go from a street in a city to another city, or another street in another city, or maybe another country without stopping. And this makes it all seamless. And this is how you stop people from using cars, because it's better. It's a quicker process. If you're going on holiday, if you're going on business, then it's a quicker way of getting to your destination. I think railway systems are a bit like before the internet. There's lots of stopping and starting. And this is much more like after the internet, so you can choose where you want to go and then seamlessly travel around the world.
Is there any difference in designing for European countries and Asia?
Yeah, a little bit. In the European countries, obviously, a lot of the infrastructure, the railway lines are already there. And in the UK, 100, 200 years old, some of them, very, very old lines. And so in the older cities, it's more complex. But when you're building new high-speed lines, perhaps between cities, it's more straightforward. But then you still have the problem that you can't build a high-speed line straight through the center of a city. And it's very expensive to go underneath. So by the nature, they tend to be on the outsides of cities. And that's why we need to think about how you then transfer from the high-speed line to the center of the city. Because if it takes a long time, or you have to get in a taxi, then there's no advantage. So we have to think about that.
What about hotels?
Yeah, I stay in a lot of hotels.
So you must know
Yes.
what are the pros and cons of big and small hotels.
Yeah. I think, there are lots of interesting things going on in hotels. We designed a number of micro hotels, like Yotel and brands like that in Europe. And I think this is interesting, where it's a high-class, high-quality hotel, but small rooms. And the advantage being is that you can have perhaps a decent price, but in the center of a city. Because if you're on a business trip, if you decide to stay in the center of a city, then of course the hotels are normally very expensive. But also then you get all the bits you don't need, like restaurants and people to carry your bags. And if you're just staying overnight, you just want a decent room, maybe with internet capabilities and clean, but a small room in the center of the city. So I think things are changing in that way.
Is this only for European cities or all around the world?
It's popular, and obviously in Japan they've had capsule hotels for many years. But I think it's a different way of looking at it. Recognizing if you're in the center of the city, then maybe you want to go to a restaurant for something to eat. You don't actually have to have a hotel restaurant. But also it's down to the design and making it really secure and friendly, but also quite small. You don't need lots of space if you're staying overnight.